Hi, it's Cara, and today I am just recovering a little bit from a bit of sickness. My voice is still not 100% perfect. I just came back from a week's holiday, and now I've got a bunch of videos to film for you, so I'm going to be pre-filming a bunch of things today in this fab new location. This is my bedroom. I realised I had to kind of make a bit of a change. Also, apologies if there's some background noise, but there are less times now that Jesse's changed jobs where the house is free with no one around, and Jesse's not good at staying quiet while I film. So I used to film out in the lounge room, but that's not really possible very often anymore, so I decided we're going to switch it up. We're going to be filming here in my bedroom. So hopefully this setup works. Let me know what you think, if there's any recommendations you have. And otherwise, we're going to be filming some videos today. Let's get started. So first off, this is my NEWTS Readathon wrap up, only because it's now like getting into the middle of September. I haven't been able to film yet because I wanted to give myself right to the end of the month to read, and especially because I was dead sick at the end of the month, which you will see if you watch my weeks 3 and 4 combined vlog, which does go for ages. I'm very sorry, but if I had to split them up into weeks 3 and weeks 4 separately, weeks 4 would have literally just been me complaining the whole time about how sick I was, and I didn't want to do that to you. So here we are instead. You can go watch that combined vlog. I'll try and remember to link it down below, but otherwise, let's go through what I actually read in the month of September for the NEWTS Readathon. So I have this little running sheet I was filling out during the month where I was making notes of what books I read. So to do this wrap up, I will go through in this kind of order, and that's not the order I read them in, but that's how we're going to talk about them today, and I'll tell you a bit about each of them or what I thought as we go through. So I did take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different owls. I got an acceptable in Ancient Runes, an E in so exceeds expectations in arithmancy. I got an A in charms. I was hoping for an E, but an A is fine. I got an E in defense against the dark arts. I got an A in herbology. Again, I was hoping for an E, but that's fine. I got an A in muggle studies, an O for outstanding in potions, which means I did technically complete the readathon because I did get 1 O. And I got an E in transfiguration. So let's keep going. Let's start with Ancient Runes. So for Ancient Runes, acceptable, I read The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton, which I think is now marketed as the 6.5 or the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I can't remember. It's got 2 titles. I know I've seen it around with different covers with the 2 different titles. But I read it, the version that I had was The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This is an adult sci-fi-ish thriller. I really enjoyed it. Very murder mystery kind of. I really loved this. I thought it was really twisty. I listened to it on audiobook from my library using BorrowBox, which I would totally recommend to you if your library uses BorrowBox. I'm not sponsored, but I love them, so definitely go check them out. They're like, I don't know how widespread they are, but they're definitely in Australia, and BorrowBox is a great service that has access. I think it's linked with Belinda Audiobooks, which is Australia's leading audiobook work people. I think they have an affiliation with Audible. They have a lot of similar titles with similar narrators and things. But it's an amazing service and I love it so much. It's just like a library borrowing service, but it has ebooks and audiobooks, and the best range of audiobooks with titles I'm actually interested in. This is not a promo for BorrowBox, so I need to get off my high horse. But I really enjoyed The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This is definitely an adult. It's super twisty. We essentially follow this, our main character, whose name is Aiden, who wakes up at this party, I guess, that's meant to be celebrating the arrival back from France of this woman, Evelyn Hardcastle, who's like the daughter of these rich, famous people, kind of. And he lives the same day, 7 days over, in different people's bodies who were at that party. It is, as he's trying to solve this murder. and it is amazing. Like, it's so well thought out and well structured. I totally recommend it. It was a mind twist. It was really good. If you're a thriller person, definitely recommend it. And I should say, I read so many audiobooks this month. I'm very proud of myself. The next 2 reads were also audiobooks. So for arithmancy, for the A in arithmancy, which is a book at least, I should have said that 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle was a book set in the past. It's not explicitly set in the past, but it's implied. It's very, like, dated. And then for A in arithmancy, a book at least 300 pages, I read Cinder by Marissa Meyer, also an audiobook through Burrowbox. This is everyone should have heard of it by now, but it's a young adult sci-fi Cinderella retelling where Cinder is a cyborg. I really enjoyed it. I had tried reading Cinder before, but I'd only read the first page or so, maybe the first chapter in like a try chapter kind of challenge years back. And I didn't fall in love with it. But this time I powered through on audiobook, and by like 3 chapters in, I was loving it. It was amazing. I'm definitely keen to keep reading all the Lunar Chronicles now, whereas originally I was like, what's all the hype about? I don't even understand. Really enjoyed it. I thought the characters were all really vibrant and dynamic, and the plot was interesting, and I'm very excited to see where it goes in Scarlet. Then for the E, I read a new release this month, also an audiobook, which is These Rebel Waves by Sarah Rash. Sarah Rash is the author of the Snow Like Ashes series, which I own the first 2 books, but I haven't read either of them yet. And These Rebel Waves is a new piratey fantasy kind of story. It's not super piratey, and it's a bit more complicated than that. People were saying it was gay pirates. It's not really gay pirates, though there is queer representation. But I did really enjoy this nevertheless. I thought the characters were really engaging and interesting, and I did read this really fast for an audiobook. I enjoyed it a lot. It kind of follows a couple of main characters, and there's a lot of intersecting threads. But essentially there's this island that's been colonialized a little. Well, yeah. And there's some power plays going on in regards to religion and magic and all kinds of stuff, and it's really interesting. I definitely would recommend it. I don't think it's the best thing I've ever read, but it was really, really enjoyable. Then we have Charms, and for my A in Charms, I read The Bone Witch by Rinch Peiko. This is the first book in a new series. I can't remember what the series is called. I have mixed feelings about this. I liked it, but I wish I had have known it was a fantasy retelling of Memoirs of a Geisha when I went into it. I thought it was just had similar themes. But it turned out to be way more close to the Memoirs of a Geisha than I thought. I think that was off-putting for me. If I had known that going in, I would have enjoyed it, but instead it made it off-putting. So this follows our main character, Taya. T, first I thought it was T because it made sense to be T, but then they said Taya at some other points. I'm not 100% sure. Who is a necromancer of sorts, and she raises her brother from the dead, and he becomes like her familiar. And there's a lot of things going on in this world, and it's told through kind of, there's kind of similar to The Name of the Wind, where you're following someone telling their story, but also following them a little bit in the current time as they're recounting that story. So it's kind of like that. So overall, I found it interesting, and I really want to continue and see where it goes. Plus, these covers are gorgeous, but I was upset with how close to Memoirs of a Geisha it was. That upset me. So it left me very confused. I did enjoy it. I just don't know if I'd recommend it. I'm not sure. Then for Defense Against the... Oh, this also fulfilled the challenge of has magic in it, was the challenge this fulfilled. And These Rebel Waves was a book that ends on an even numbered page. So then for Defense Against the Dark Arts, the acceptable challenge was to read the last book in a series. And for that, I read The Land of Stories Worlds Collide by Chris Colfer. This is a middle grade book. This is book 6 in the series and the last one. This follows twins who travel into this magical world that's kind of like a Mother Goose fairy tale world, but a bit twisted. And it's really fun. Really engaging. Totally recommend this for like the 8 to 10 age group. I used to recommend this all the time when I worked at the bookstore, this series. I'm glad I finally finished it. I do find it a little bit draggy as an adult, and I think the last 3 books in the series that kind of diverged from the fairy tale retelling I didn't like as much, but it was alright. It was good. It was a fun time. I think this one was better than books 4 and 5, but not as good as books 1, 2, or 3. So definitely was a fun time. Then for an E in Defense Against the Dark Arts, we have a foiled book, and for this I read The Wicked Deep by Shea Earnshaw. This is a very short, creepy book following our main character Penny, who lives in this town where every year they have this thing called the, what do they call it? It's like the drowning season, something like that, where these 3 girls that were drowned as witches come back to life and drown boys. I had mixed feelings about this. Again, some people love it, some people hate it. It's very polarizing. I did hear someone review saying that the first half of the book was like a 2-star and the end was a 5-star, which made it very hard to rate, and I kind of agree with that. There were things I really enjoyed. It was very twisty and interesting in that regards, but it was a kind of slower pace. And I did guess the twist quite early on. So, I don't know. I don't know if I'd recommend it. I don't think it was good enough for me to like hand it to people saying, read this. But it wasn't a bad read. It was fine. Then for my A in herbology, the prompt was to read a book with a green cover, and I read Morrigan by Mary E. Pearson, which is a novella set in the Remnant Chronicles, prior to the Remnant Chronicles, and I read this on audiobook because that was the only way I could get my hands on it. That was fine anyway. It was a good audiobook. This is pretty short. I enjoyed it. I don't think it was anything super amazing. I think the plot was a little bit limited, as with most novellas, but it was fun and enjoyable, and a great way to add a short book into the readathon. Then for Muggle Studies, my A in Muggle Studies, I read a book from my favourite author, and for that I read Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, which I also read on audiobook. Can you tell I was like living for audiobooks this month? Strange the Dreamer is a book I absolutely love. It was a reread for me. I wanted to reread it in the lead up to the release of Muse of Nightmares. I thought Steve West did a great job on the narration. I'm really enjoying Steve West narrated books, and this didn't disappoint me. I think I picked up some more things that people had claimed were faults of the book that I didn't when I read it the first time around, and I'm definitely glad I reread it because there are huge plot points I'd entirely forgotten about in the lead up to Muse of Nightmares. So I'm very glad I reread it. This is a fantasy, very lyrical, but probably is lacking in some plot development, but I love it anyway because it's just so beautifully written. That's kind of Laini Taylor's thing, and I love it. Then for potions, the A in potions was a book with a name of a colour in the title, and for that I read Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. I actually was halfway through, or like a third of the way through this when the readathon started, which I'm glad about because it's huge. This is like a 500-page fantasy beast. This is a fantasy series, the first book in a trilogy, I believe, that follows this girl Nona, who gets taken to this convent for like assassin nuns, and it's amazing. I've already bought the sequel, which you will see in my upcoming haul, which I'm going to be filming today as well. This is amazing. I don't even know how to describe it. It does have a few things that I was a little bit cringy on, but I can't even remember them now. I just remember going, oh, that could have been better. But it's vicious and complex, and the world's really interesting, and like overwhelmingly run with female characters, and all the males are pigs, and it's amazing. I'm definitely excited to read the sequel very soon. I 100% recommend this. 5 stars. It was great. So much background noise, I'm sorry. Then for an E in potions, I needed to read a book with a male lead character, and for that I read The Black Tides of Heaven by Ji Yang. This is the first in a series. I believe this is the first, but the first 2 books are kind of like twin novellas following these 2 twins, Akeha and Makoya. And technically, I actually like that I picked this for this challenge because gender is a big focus in this world. This is an Asian-inspired steampunk fantasy. And it follows these two characters who are twins. And in this world, gender, you are like genderless and you don't develop a sexual identity, I guess, either, or a physical sex until puberty, where you choose what gender you want to be. And gender and sex are attached in that way, I think. So one of the main characters chooses to be a woman and then like develops as a woman when she makes that choice. And then the other character chooses to become a man. But there's a lot of kind of like politics tied up in that. So it was really interesting. That's not the main plot at all, but it's just kind of like an interesting world building. I think because the author is a gender, so it works really interesting. It's a very good commentary on that kind of thing. Anyway, I really enjoyed this. I really want to read the second one. It's nice and short. The third book just came out. Again, I think it's nice and short. So I'm going to have a fun time reading these. And it's a really interesting fantasy take. I really enjoyed it. And then for my only O for the readathon, I was hoping for so many more, but these things just happen. I read City of Lost Souls by Cassandra Clare, which is another reread leading up to the release of Queen of Air and Darkness. I enjoyed the audiobook for City of Lost Souls. Alright, it was fine. I read it quite fast, which was good. And it was fine. It did its job. I needed to read it because I need to get through these to try and get things finished before Queen of Air and Darkness comes out. I definitely need to reread Lady Midnight and Lord of Shadows before Queen of Air and Darkness because I can hardly remember the plot of either of those, but I decided to start from the start. So next I'll be reading Clockwork Princess, so keep an eye out for that. But anyway, City of Lost Souls was good, normal. I enjoy it. I had forgotten quite a few plot points, so another glad reason that I reread it. But I love this series. And then finally we have Transfiguration, and for an acceptable in Transfiguration I needed to read a book with a grey cover, and for that I read To Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer, which is book 1 in the Terra Ignota series. Technically the spine and the back are red, but I think the front is rather grey, so I counted it. This is a ridiculously intense sci-fi series. This is the first book. I have already bought the second book, but I haven't read it yet. I don't even know how to describe this. I heard somebody say that it's like the author built their sandbox to play in, and I 100% agree with that. This world is super expansive, but very different and the same from her own in different ways, and it's very intelligent and clever and twisty, and there are things I certainly didn't get. And I think some people have criticized it for that it's too intelligent, so then it comes across kind of uppity. But I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of intense situations happening. I really like the characters, especially the main character. He's dislikable but likable in the same way. And I really want to see how all this goes because there are so many threads and everything's interconnected, but you don't know how, and oh, it's just so good. This is currently I think the 4th book's about to come out, but I definitely need to get on top of this series and be like up to date because I enjoyed it immensely. I gave this 5 stars. And finally, I guess we're ending on a bit of a disappointing note, but it's the end of my bit of paper, so blame the bit of paper. And this is Transfiguration, My Exceeds Expectations, which is a new to you author, and for that I read Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young, and a lot of people were reading this this month because there's a challenge to read something with sky, in a word with sky in the title. I didn't read it for that one, but I read it for a new to me author. And this was described as like Vikings and Wonder Woman. I don't really get Wonder Woman vibes at all. I kind of understood the Viking a little bit, but only because it's a little bit Norsey, kind of Scandinavian. But this follows a girl in a tribe that is like in a warring tribe against another tribe, and I don't even know what the plot is, but there's a bit of romance and a bit of like finding out the other group are human too. I was personally majorly disappointed by this. I didn't despise it, but I found it really boring. I don't think much happened. I don't think it had much of a purpose. And also I was sick while trying to read this, so it just dragged and dragged and dragged. So I wasn't a fan. I definitely wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I don't think it was the worst book I've ever read, but it was definitely nothing amazing. So that was my feelings on this. So I do really like the cover. It's a nice cover. That is a nice boulder. So these are the books I read in the month of September for the NEWTS Magical Readathon. Thank you for watching. I hope if you participated in the NEWTS Readathon, comment down below and let me know. And also link me your wrap-up videos because I'm very keen to watch them. I know it's a bit late now, but surely you've already got yours up before I have. I can't wait till next year to participate in these readathons again because I really, really enjoyed them. And I'm just having a good time with them. They're a fun time. I like month-long readathons. I feel like I can get a lot done and it doesn't matter about my schedule, whereas often weekly ones don't fit well for me. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully we can get back to a kind of regular filming schedule, etc. and getting stuff up. But I am also going away at the end of the month again, so who knows? I will see you next time with another video. Thank you. Bye.